The purpose of this video is to demonstrate a short, easy method to writing a short 3 to 5 page philosophy paper. The benefits of this method is if you master this, it should take the mystery out of writing longer philosophy papers, and I think even take the mystery out of writing papers for other disciplines. So let's get right to it. Now, if you're watching this for a class, you're probably already familiar with some of the vocabulary that we use in this class, but just so we're all on the same page, when I talk about an argument, I don't mean just like a verbal dispute between people. I mean something like a series of sentences. There will be a conclusion. One of the sentences will be the conclusion, and then you'll have the premises that are designed to support the conclusion. The arguments have two properties that we're going to be interested in, or can have two properties. One is validity. An argument's valid just in case it's impossible for the premises to be true while the conclusion is false. And then soundness is the other property we're interested in. An argument is sound just in case it's valid and all of the premises are true. So let's just do a quick example. So this would be one premise of an argument, a possible argument: if grass is red, then pigs fly. Grass is red, so pigs fly. Now this is obviously crazy, but it is valid because truth of premises is irrelevant to validity. Validity is just a property that of the relationship between the premises and the conclusion. So the idea is, if this is true, as crazy as it sounds, and if this is true, as crazy as it sounds, this would have to be true. But this argument is valid, but the bad thing about it is it's unsound because both of the premises are obviously false. So that's what I mean by an argument, and it's this sort of thing that's going to be an important part of writing this short paper. So to present an argument, first thing you want to do is you want to find that conclusion. You want to find the conclusion, and you want to make sure you know what the conclusion of the argument is. This is particularly important when you're reading a passage or something. You want to find what it is the author is trying to argue for and be able to state that in clear, literal terminology. And then you want to find the central premises. These will be the things that are cited as reasons for the conclusion. Now, oftentimes you might encounter that authors will state some of the reasons for the conclusion, but they won't state all of them explicitly. But it's a good idea to get into the habit of adding all of those suppressed premises. And then once you have all of that, write it out nice and neatly in numbered premise form, like the argument you saw just a little bit ago. And we can just do a sample here real quick. Suppose you get the following passage. Someone says to you, "You think you have free will? That's crazy. Hasn't science shown us that determinism is true?" Well, this person doesn't actually come right out and say what their conclusion is, at least what I think their conclusion is. I think they take it that by saying that's crazy, what they mean to indicate is that they're trying to argue that we don't have free will. And then they don't ever they don't even really state any additional reasons. They just give us this question. Well, questions aren't really reasons, but I take it when they say this, they're thinking that it's obvious, at least to them, that determinism is true, or at least obvious based on what they've heard about in science or something like that. But they've got the conclusion here, and they've got this premise here. But that bit I said about adding suppressed premises, one thing that they don't state explicitly is the link between this and the conclusion. And so they've got to have some premise like this in mind that they don't explicitly state, that if determinism is true, then we don't have free will. And then you've got your conclusion in there, so we don't have free will. So that's what I have in mind by presenting an argument in numbered premise form. Now, I'm not endorsing this argument. I'm just using this as a kind of example of an argument you might encounter in philosophy and that you might discuss in a paper. So now, once you have that argument laid out, the next step is to explain the argument. The first step is to define technical terms. Technical terms will be philosophical terms that might not come up in ordinary everyday conversation, that you're going to want to let your reader know what they mean. Or they might be terms that have multiple meanings, or maybe are possibly ambiguous, and you want to make it a bit more precise what you mean by saying, but by this term, which has multiple meanings, I mean this. And after you've defined your technical terms, you're going to want to motivate each premise, and by that I just mean give arguments for each premise. Give us reasons why a reasonable person might think this is true. Even if you think the argument is ultimately unsound, it's still a good idea to get in the habit of just saying, okay, well, here's this argument, and you can see that it's not crazy. A reasonable person might think each of these premises are true for the following reasons. So let's just bring back our stock argument. Here, in terms of defining technical terms, determinism definitely is one of those terms you'll want to define. And free will is also one that you're going to want to sort of say what you mean by both of those things. And then to motivate each premise, what I'm talking about is you're going to want a paragraph, at least a paragraph, that says why someone should think determinism is true. And another thing you're going to want to do, you're going to have another paragraph that says why someone should think that the fact that determinism is true, it immediately follows that we don't have free will. And once you've done all of that, you've explained your argument. Okay, the last thing is to evaluate the argument. Evaluating the argument is where you're going to weigh in and actually take a position on soundness. So state whether you think the argument is sound or not. If you think this argument is sound, it means you think it's valid, you think all the premises are true, you think the conclusion is true, and so what you need to do is you need to consider a possible objection to a premise and defend it. So defend a premise from a possible objection. Alternatively, if you think the argument's unsound, then you're committed to one of the premises being false, and I want you to identify which premise, at least one premise, that you think is false, and give us an argument for why you think it's false. Why should we reject that premise? After you do that, I want you to carry the debate out a step further. I want you to defend your position from a possible counter-response. So if you defended a premise from a possible objection, then I want you to say what someone might say against your defense. And if you've argued against a premise, arguing that the argument's unsound, I want you to say what someone might say. I want you to consider what someone might say in response to that argument, and then say what's wrong with it. Okay, so there's a nice outline of the method. Now I'd like to look briefly at a sample paper just so you can get a better sense of what it is I have in mind. So here's a sample paper. This is from an actual student. You use this with their permission. And let's just go through this. So one thing I haven't talked about is intros, but this is a really nice intro here. Just saying, look, in this paper I'm going to argue for this. Just state right up front what it is you're going to argue for. I know sometimes we learn that intros should be snazzier, should maybe set the debate in its historical context or whatever, something like that. But don't worry about that for a short 3 to 5 page paper. You don't have enough space for that. You just get right down to it. What is it that you're going to be arguing for? And here you can see they presented the argument nicely. This is another kind of version. This is really just an argument for incompatibilism, that determinism and free will are incompatible. It doesn't go so far as to conclude that there is no free will. But there you see, they've presented it nice and in number premise form, and you can see it's valid. Now look, right after that, they have this nice thing here where they actually say, okay, first we need to know what determinism and free will are, and they go on to define each term. And if you go down a little bit further, you're going to see, look, they're right there. They've said premise 1 follows from determinism. What they really mean, I think, is that according to the definition of determinism that we gave up at the top, it's going to follow that we don't, well, let's see. Yeah, see. Premise 1, yeah, they defined determinism as every event having a cause, so that's just true by definition. You can see they did that. And then they went on, and you can see over here, they've also tried to give a defense of premise 2. And there you go. I don't have the evaluation portion in here. I just wanted you to sort of see how a nice presentation and explanation could be set up. So that's the method. There's an example. And a couple more things. Some common pitfalls in these short papers. One, students spend a lot of time padding their paper with a bunch of needless words that they don't need to, intentionally trying to complicate the sentence structure, intentionally padding the intro with a lot of excess unnecessary information. Don't do any of that. 3 to 5 pages, you need to be as precise as concise, as possible. So don't spend any time with needless words. The other thing is, in a 3 to 5 page paper, you are not going to prove definitively the existence of God, and you're not going to prove that God doesn't exist in 3 to 5 pages. If you were going to do something like that, you would really want to spend time writing an entire book. But you're not writing an entire book, you're writing a 3 to 5 page paper. So I think it might be helpful to think of your 3 to 5 page paper as something like a section in a book. So, there's this one problem with an argument for God's existence that you want to talk about. Or there's this one problem in this argument against God's existence that you want to talk about, and that would fit into a much larger work. So try and think of that when you're thinking about these short 3 to 5 page papers. And then related to that, what I think is good about this method is it's going to take a lot of the mystery out of writing a paper, writing a longer paper. To write a longer paper, and I'm going to have another video on this, you can just do some permutation or combination of this short present, explain, and evaluate method. Present, explain, and evaluate 3 arguments around a unified topic, and you've got yourself not a 3 to 5 page paper, but a 9 to 15 page paper. And I'm also going to have another video about writing papers for other disciplines. This is a kind of method that's amenable to writing argumentative essays in a wide range of disciplines. But I'm going to stop now. For now, in this video, I just wanted to get that method out and get an example, so I hope you find that helpful.